It's 6:59, but it's about that time. So,
I have 7. It's okay.
I have 7.
oh, good. Oh, yeah. 7 it just turned. All right. Let me just find my notes to call us to order. Okay, here we go. All right, so calling the meeting to order, roll call, please, Anne.
Yes, sorry about that. Commissioner Bainan is absent, excused. Commissioner Garrett Penguilla.
I'm here.
Great. Commissioner Grossman.
Here.
Commissioner Cannoli is absent, excused. Commissioner Lindsay.
Here.
Commissioner Rye.
Here.
And Chair Zapata.
Here. Thank you, Anne. Would anyone like to read the land acknowledgement? It's both in the packet. I think it sort of scrolls through on the screen, but if you'd like to, just to mix up the voices.
Chair, why don't you just call on one of the commissioner and they'll take turns, I'm sure.
There we go. All right, thank you. Kathy, you want to read it?
I don't have it in front of me. What package are you talking about? Because I think I've been looking for it, or is it something I have to download from the site? I'm new at this.
So if you go to the SEJC website, which is part of this, it's under the City of Albany, there's actually a live agenda that has lots of links in it. And, in general, we try to, in the future, we try to read them ahead of time so that we're, there's lots of things to read. So
on the site, I don't see the videos, agendas, and minutes, that orange button.
Yeah, if you just look, it should say, yeah, thanks, Anne.
Go ahead, you can read it off of the, right after the call to order,
Hey.
starting with the quote.
Thank you, Anne. You're so helpful. This is coming on. Okay. I'll just move it around then. There we go. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Liza. Did I pronounce that correctly? We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that's owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen as a reminder of the agreements that we made. This was created in September, and what we had agreed on in terms of kind of just norms of the way we work together. We agreed on to keep our comments to, if possible, no more than 2 minutes, just because time is of the essence. This sense of sharing time to leave space for those who have not commented to do so. Using the raise hand function and lowering it once you've had a turn, it just helps with clarity. We try to keep our meeting agenda manageable, ideally 2 main items so that we can be effective with our time and also dig in with the public. And then lastly, respect for one another, just this idea of maintaining collegiality and effectiveness. So as a reminder, and we are going to move on to item 2, which is approval of the minutes. Are there any amendments or motion to approve?
I move to approve.
All right. Any discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Garrett Penguilla,
Yes.
Commissioner Grossman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay,
Yes.
Commissioner Rye,
Here. Oh,
and
yeah.
Chair Zapata.
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So this item 3 is public comment. This is time to address the SEJC on any issue that is not on our agenda. The Brown Act limits us to discuss the things that are obviously listed on our agenda, but this time is for the public to use the raise hand function and make any comments they'd like that are of issues that are not on the agenda. Okay, so I don't see any hands, so we're going to move on. Are there any staff announcements?
Just a brief one, that the commission discussed the aging in place recommendation to the council. That right now is tentatively scheduled for May 2nd. Tentatively.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any commissioners' announcements? If you'd like to make some announcements, please use the raise hand function, if possible, and then we'll just go through. Jeremiah?
Yeah, I'd like to make my announcements as usual. Let's see here. So, for the public, anybody listening out there, after you finish all the food in your refrigerator and you clean out your pantry and you ate everything, it's time to restock your refrigerator and your pantry. So, why don't you go to the local food bank and get some really good food for free? There's 2 of them that are in Berkeley, right down the street. One is Berkeley Food Pantry, located at 1600 Sacramento and Cedar intersection. And they're open Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. And they do Tuesday home deliveries. And also the other really good food bank is the Berkeley Food Network, located at 1925 9th Street and University. They are open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. And they're open Mondays and Wednesdays from 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. after work. So you can go at the end of the day. And they're closed Sundays and Fridays. And also, I just want to announce that on Thursdays at Solano Cleaning Center, there's the laundry program. And you can get 2 loads maximum of wash, and Little Star Pizza donates 2 free large pizzas. And so come get your free slice of pizza. Also, we're doing free COVID tests. It's a walk-up free COVID test, and it's really non-invasive, and you don't have to stand in line or anything. It's just you don't have to schedule, so walk-up COVID test. And also, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other announcements? Bart?
Yeah, I just think it's important to say that the food pantries are designed to serve people who need food, who are poor and don't have access to food. So I don't think we should encourage people who have access and can afford to buy food to use those facilities. I think it's important to clarify that. Thank you.
Well, that's actually wrong. The food banks are put on by the Alameda County.
Yes.
And they're for families. They're for anybody with an Albany address. And it's not for homeless people. It's not only for people with jobs. It's for everybody, Bart. So please encourage people to use food banks to save money, because at the end of the day, a lot of food gets thrown away because not enough people go, because too many people out there are discouraging people from going. So we got to encourage people. So Bart, I don't appreciate me making a presentation and you coming after me to try to discredit my presentation.
Well, I'm not going to get into an argument with you now, but as a social
So don't
worker,
start one, okay?
I am concerned that free food goes to people who need it. And that's about all I'm going to say.
So,
Thank you both for your announcement. Chair, if we can move on, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. All right, so we're going to move on to presentations. We're joined by some visitors this evening for a presentation on the housing element. There are a variety of attachments in the agenda that have been sent. So there's a lot to navigate for the public. We're obviously interested in including your voices. We're going to have the presentation and then provide time for public comment. And we're so glad both the public is here as well as you all. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. My name is Jeff Bond. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. It's nice to be here. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our consultant, Barry Miller. But what I'd like to do as an introduction is give you a little context about what the Community Development Department does and why the housing element is such an important part of what we do. So Community Development Department is kind of, we have a pretty wide portfolio of responsibilities. We do the permitting and planning for new construction in the city. So we support the city's Planning and Zoning Commission. And for things like building permits and inspections, our office does that as well. We're also the transportation planning and sustainability climate action planning department for the city. So we support the city's Transportation Commission and the city's Climate Action Committee in their work for the community. And then last but not least, there's kind of a little catch-all section of our department, which does a variety of different things, things like creek and waterfront planning, disaster resilience, and importantly, affordable housing. So we're managing the soon to begin, we hope, affordable housing project that the Satellite Affordable Housing Associates is building down on Cleveland Avenue. So as I mentioned, the housing element is an important part of what we do. Every city in California is supposed to have and does have a general plan, which is kind of the comprehensive vision for the physical development of the city. And the housing element is an important component of that. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to, well, first introduce and then turn it over to our consultant, Barry Miller. Barry is a recognized expert in general plans and housing elements. He has worked for the city and various planning efforts in both the general plan and our previous housing elements for probably about 7 or 8 years, maybe more than that by now, and has worked in a number of other communities throughout the country on this kind of planning. So we've been making a lot of progress. We're pleased to be able to be here this evening to tell you about what we've done, get your feedback, hear from the members of the community, and hopefully see you in the future as this planning effort continues. So with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Barry and let him make a presentation on the details of our housing element effort.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And I am going to share my screen and bring up a PowerPoint presentation, if I may. And great. Jeff provided some context for the presentation. We're just going to tell you a little bit about what the housing element is and what why we're updating it now and what some of the issues are that we're addressing in this document. We also have some information on new demographic data for Albany and an overview of housing sites, which is an important part of this process, is looking at opportunities in the city where housing could be built in the future. So as Jeff mentioned, this is a mandatory part of the city's general plan. Actually, every city and county in the state of California is required to adopt a plan for how it's going to conserve its existing housing, produce additional housing, and particularly provide affordable housing that meets the needs of its residents and also the community's fair share of the region's need for housing. So unlike other parts of our city's long-range plan, this part of our general plan is very prescriptive based on state law requirements. So we don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we get to choose or what we get to include in this element. A lot of this is dictated by the State Department of Housing and Community Development and the California legislature, which over the years has passed many bills that relate to housing and the responsibilities of each community in the state. The element covers an 8-year planning period. So we have currently, we're in what's called the 5th cycle. We've been at this for about 40 years, so enough to go through 5 cycles of 8-year planning periods. We're moving into the 6th cycle, which begins on January 2023 and runs through January 2031. So once we finish a draft of our housing element, we submit it to the state of California, HCD, Housing and Community Development, and they review the document to let us know if it's certifiable, and if it's not, we have to make changes and revisions to the document until it is. If we don't have a certified housing element, we run the risk of both lawsuits and the loss of eligibility for certain grants, not just for housing, but also for things like transportation. So a lot of the grants that are provided by the state of California are contingent on cities having certified housing elements. In terms of what's actually in the housing element, you can see on this slide that there are 5 major topic areas. First, we have an evaluation of the previous housing element. So in this case, we're going to be, where we are, looking back at what we've accomplished in the last 8 years. We had a plan that was adopted in 2015, and we go through that plan and evaluate how we're doing in implementing it. And if we're falling short, why are we falling short? And what are the steps that we can take as a city to better meet our housing needs? There's a needs assessment, which looks mostly at demographic data, but also at things like the condition of our housing stock and market trends. But this is really where we look at what the needs are in the community. What are the unique needs in Albany? And then the resources section is really that discussion of opportunity sites that I was mentioning. In other words, where are there opportunities in Albany to construct housing, particularly affordable housing, and what are some of the financial resources that may be available to assist in getting housing that's built, particularly affordable housing again. Then there's a constraints analysis, which looks at all of the obstacles to construction of housing in the community. And these are things like our zoning regulations, the cost of construction materials, environmental requirements, the cost of land, things like that, availability of water and sewer facilities, and so on. And where we identify constraints, we need to be able to identify what we're going to do to address those constraints. So if we find out that our height limits, for example, are too low, then we need to have actions in our housing element to increase the height limits or take steps to make it more feasible to build more units that make a project more viable. The last of these boxes is affirmatively furthering fair housing. This is a new requirement that we weren't required by state law to address in the last housing element. The state law passed in 2017 that every city in the state has to include a dedicated section of their element that shows what they're doing to end segregation and discrimination in their community and to create equal access and better opportunities for housing for all people. So all of these topic areas feed in to a set of goals, objectives, policies, and actions for the future. So it's a very important document that has a lot of weight. Just for reference, these are the goals in Albany's current housing element. They were adopted 8 years ago. I'm not going to read them all individually, but just in a nutshell, the first goal is really about preserving what we already have, preserving our existing housing stock. The second is about producing new housing, particularly housing that meets the needs of all economic segments of the community. Third is a goal to assist persons with special needs, and you can see various groups that are listed here, including older adults and persons with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness. The fourth goal relates to removing barriers and constraints that make it more difficult to build housing. And the final goal is providing housing opportunities for all persons, regardless of age, race, marital status, and so forth. So in many respects, these goals are still relevant. They're still the things that we strive for as a community. The question really is, what sorts of policies and programs can the city look at to achieve these goals? So part of the housing element, we have actually a specific task before us, and that is to demonstrate to the state that we're meeting our fair share of the region's housing needs. And that there's actually a number of housing units that's assigned to each city in the state of California. So for the entire Bay Area, for the next 8 years, the state has said that we need to accommodate 441,176 units of housing. Now, that doesn't mean that each city has to go out and build housing. What that means is that we have to plan for producing that number of units in order to meet our needs. That total number is for all 9 counties and 101 cities in the region. And the Association of Bay Area Governments takes that number and breaks it down to individual cities in the region using a model that considers things like the size of each city, the number of people working in each city, the availability of public transportation, and the income in that city. So our share for the next cycle is 1,114 units. It's less than 0.25% of the regional total, but I do want to point out that it's more than 3 times what the number was the last time we did this 8 years ago. And the reason that it's gotten so much higher is that the need for housing has become much greater in the region. We haven't built as much as we should based on the number of jobs that we've added, and each community has seen a big increase in its share for the next 8 years. So that number is not just 1,114 single-family homes. It's actually broken down into different income groups. You can see here that our number includes 308 units that should be affordable to very low-income households, and 178 that should be affordable to low-income households. So that's about 500 units that are serving households that have incomes of, if for a household of 4, that's $109,000 household income. So if you're a household of 4, you're earning less than $109,000, you're considered a low income household. For very low income, it's about $68,000 for a household of 4. So we know we have a lot of households in our community that are in those income groups. They really can't find adequate housing in today's market without some assistance. So I'm going to go through a couple of demographic statistics here, just quickly based on the new census. We gained 1,700 people between 2010 and 2020, but that population growth actually was not because we built a lot of housing during that 10-year period. It's because our households got bigger and our vacancy rate got lower. We actually only added about 100 housing units other than the Belmont Village assisted living development on San Pablo Avenue. So our household size has gone up. It was 2.34 in 2000, 20 years ago. It's now 2.62. Those numbers may sound close together, but you know that's a pretty big impact when you think about the number of large households that we're seeing. Our fastest growing age groups in the city are 65 to 74-year-olds. That's the baby boomers entering retirement, and age 5 to 14. So we're seeing a pretty big increase in the number of children in the city as well. The non-Hispanic white population in Albany has declined from 55% to 47% of the total. And we have about 13% of our residents who speak English less than very well. Also, there are about 7,500 households in the city, and about 41% of those households have children under 18 living at home. That's relatively high compared to other cities in Alameda County. You can see the countywide average is 30%. 53% of all of the households in Albany are renters. We've always been a city that was roughly 50-50, where there were about equal numbers of renters and owners, but that's tipping now more toward renters. And that's in part because the high cost of home ownership is making it more difficult for many households to move into the ownership market. Moving on to the next slide, we have roughly well, let me say this a different way. If you are a household earning $63,000 in Albany, you're going to be spending roughly half of your income to afford the median priced apartment in the city. So we've seen a steep increase in rents, and a large percentage of the housing units in Albany are 2 bedrooms or fewer, about nearly 70% of the units. So we don't have a large inventory of 3 and 4 bedroom units, although we have a growing number of families that may need 3 or 4 bedrooms to avoid overcrowding. And it's even more pronounced in the rental market. About 87% of our units have 2 bedrooms or fewer. Roughly 5% of all the homes in the city are vacant, and 50% of our housing stock is more than 80 years old. And again, relative to other cities, that's a very high percentage. That means that we have a relatively high need for housing maintenance, and particularly for low-income households and older adults. There may be a need for financial assistance for home maintenance and repair. The percentage of households that meet the census definition of overcrowding has doubled just in the past 10 years alone, as we have more households living in smaller apartments, larger households. And the median home value in Albany increased at a faster rate than the Bay Area average. The Bay Area average was already 117%, and locally that was 127%, meaning that the median value of a home in Albany today is over $1.1 million. And one of the outcomes of that is that we have a large percentage of our residents that are spending a large percentage of their income on housing. So more than 25% of our renters are spending more than half of their incomes on their housing costs. So moving on, the inventory of housing sites is an important part of this process. We need to demonstrate capacity, not only for our 1,114 units, but for extra units in case some of those sites that we identify become unavailable during this time period. So the state requires that we add a buffer of about 25% to our assignment. Right now, we've calculated that we have the capacity for about 930 housing units in the city. So we're short. We need to rezone property in order to make up the gap of about 460 units. And the way we're planning on doing that is through what's called a specific plan for San Pablo Avenue. Some of you are aware of that plan and may have participated in meetings or surveys about that plan. But the idea there is that we have a major commercial corridor that runs through the city with zoning that only allows 3 stories, while our neighbors to the south in Berkeley and to the north in El Cerrito have zoning that allows taller buildings, 5 or 6 stories. And so we're proposing increases to the height limit and to the zoning regulations along San Pablo Avenue to allow additional development. We're also looking at potentially rezoning a vacant piece of property on Pierce Street that's just south of the Gateview Towers, where zoning does not allow the kinds of densities that could support affordable housing. There's a large vacant property there that we're proposing be rezoned to allow for multifamily units. We're also making the case to the state that the housing that's built at UC Village in the future should count toward our obligation to build or to plan for affordable housing. That housing at UC Village does meet a need in our community, and Albany Village students are an important part of our community. So this is really something that we're lobbying for. The state right now does not allow us to count student housing toward our obligation. So we've identified a number of sites. I'm putting this in only to show you that there's a separate document you can visit online on the city's website that inventories each housing site and provides you basic information about how many units can be potentially built there and some background on the property. With the rezoning that's been proposed, you can see the 3 bar charts here. This is with no zoning changes. This is with a specific plan for San Pablo Avenue, and this is with zoning changes for San Pablo, Solano, Albany Hill, and counting the UC Village units. So we will get over the number we need to meet. The next topic that's covered is the constraints to building housing. And I'll just say about this that we had a long meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission a few weeks ago to go through our findings related to Albany's zoning regulations and other constraints, and looking at ways we can make it easier and encourage developers to build more affordable units in the city. And then the affirmatively furthering fair housing piece, which is starting up, and we'll expect to be working on this during the month of May. This looks at data. There's a lot of data that's been provided to the city on poverty, on historic patterns of exclusion and segregation in the city, looking at what steps we can take to enforce fair housing rules, and making sure that we're not concentrating all of our affordable housing opportunities in one place. So that's one of the reasons we need to look beyond just San Pablo Avenue, is to say, we want to have an inclusive and diverse community that has housing opportunities in multiple neighborhoods in multiple areas. And so we're looking at ways we can do that. Displacement is another big issue that we're looking at in this section. And this really is what steps can we take to make sure that those who have lived here for generations can stay here and aren't priced out or displaced from the units they live in. And then finally, how can we engage communities that haven't really participated in planning processes in a better way? How can we do more outreach to folks who don't speak English, or to young families who may be too busy to come to a night meeting, or to others who maybe don't know about how to engage in civic processes? So that's a big part of this. So just some policy issues. I will add that we went to the city council about a month ago and talked with them about some of the issues that I've raised in this. I've already mentioned most of these topic areas, and the council had some thoughtful and useful feedback. We are going to other city commissions and to the community at large to ask some of these same questions. And we're hopeful to hear from your commission about any thoughts or ideas you have related to how the city can better meet its affordable housing obligations in the future. I didn't include a slide in the presentation on our timeline, but I want to add that we're working toward getting a preliminary draft of this document ready by the end of June, and bringing it to the council, or bringing it to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council for adoption by January 31st, 2023. So we have a little bit of time, but a chunk of that time is going to be when the state of California is reviewing our draft. So we're going to continue to do outreach and get input while it's circulating. But we've got about 9 months before we have to adopt the plan and submit it to the state. Thanks for having us, and we look forward to comments and questions.
Thank you so much. I see Bart's hand, but I actually want to go to public comment so that we have time for the public, and then we'll engage the commission. So if you have a comment and you are one of our attendees, please raise your hand, and we will provide 3 minutes for you. I see 2 hands so far, and Anne, if you can move our first speaker. Oh, there's the timer, sorry. Rosemary, we can't hear you. Maybe we can restart the clock and then.
Can
There
you
you
hear me now? Okay.
Yes, okay, let's restart.
No, that's okay. I don't think it'll take me 3 minutes. My question is just because I see so many accessory dwelling units being put up these days, and I just wondered how those figure into these numbers, and that would just be helpful for me to know. Thank you.
Barry, do you want to go ahead and give some information?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to respond to that. And it's a great question, and I really should have addressed it in my presentation. I think we were trying to abridge some of the content, but we're going to count accessory dwelling units toward our housing needs. Those are generally serving folks in the moderate income category, but we can count some of them toward meeting the low income need as well. We've been given some data on what accessory dwelling units are renting for, which is helpful in showing who they're serving in our community. We can't just pull a number out of the air and say that's how many we're going to build in the future. We have to base it on our last 3 years of production. And the city's done a pretty good job. I'm trying to remember, and Jeff, you may know the number off the top of your head, but it's either 10 units or 20 units per year. I think it's 10 that we're averaging, and we'll be assuming about 80 over the next 8 years. Does that sound right?
I believe that's right. We're updating actually just for the last calendar year right now. It's going to be in that range. I forget it. Also, I'm not recalling the exact number, but yeah, it continues to be a very popular way to add housing in the city. A lot of people are doing it.
Thank you. We're going to go to our next commenter.
Hi, this is Margie Marks. I have several comments. First, I wanted to say that in the last 2 days, 2 people in Albany have told me that I shouldn't really fight to get the arena numbers up because the city's not going to build anything anyway. The city doesn't build anything. The city doesn't do anything. I know we have the SAHA project, but people are feeling very discouraged. So regarding the housing project, with the housing element, one, I really object to the city trying to get rid of to count the 289 units at UC Village as part of our RENA numbers. It's low-income RENA numbers. The city needs every low-income unit it can get. 289 is a lot, and those units are only available to UC students and their families. So I think the city should stop trying to appeal that. The city of Davis has been told that if they want to do it, they're appealing only 100 units, that they have to keep track of who lives in those units and how much their income is and all that stuff. I'd rather the city spent their energy trying to build partnerships with SAHA and other groups. Also in the housing unit, I think we need to have the history of redlining that took place in Albany. Part of the assessment of fair housing says that the city would look at segregation patterns and trends. We did have redlining here. The high school teaches it in the high school. And I think it's an important part of our history that needs to be in the housing element. Another issue has to do with tenant protections and anti-displacement strategies. When we got the rent review, those of us that were working on it begged for just cause for eviction. We didn't get it, but now the state is saying that cities need to advance tenant protections and anti-displacement strategies. Just cause for eviction is the main element for doing that. The city needs to do that. The other thing is there are very, very few Section 8 apartments in the city of Albany. I think that's what you would call subsidized apartments, which is subsidies are referred to. Can't we put something in the element that would make landlords have to somehow give Section 8 or subsidized housing? It doesn't have to be Section 8, but I want poor people to live in Albany too. I've come to the conclusion we can't change the price of housing, so we have to subsidize people to rent here and subsidize people to buy homes here, help them with down payments. There's a lot of people in the city that want to do that. We want a land trust. We want a lot of things. But those are just a few. My time is running out. Thank you. And I thought, Mr. Miller, I didn't think you could do a good job with the housing element with this amount of time, but I did think your presentation was quite good. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to move us back to the commission. And I see Bart's hand up. And this is a time, just to be clear, for questions and comments from the commission.
Okay, I have a number of points that I'd like to make that I hope you will consider. First of all, there's an emphasis, there has been, I didn't have a chance to read the new housing element as carefully as I would like. I did review it, but there's an emphasis on ground floor commercial. And we've tried that before, as have other cities, and you wind up with nail salons and doctor's offices. And I'm not persuaded that that really helps anybody. So I think before we include that as a requirement, we really ought to consider whether it does anything. In terms of senior facilities, you indicate that one of the fastest growing populations is 65 to 74, but I don't see anything about senior facilities in the plan. And one of the problems that seniors have, and I speak from experience, is that while we may have houses that are worth a great deal, that doesn't mean we have a lot of money. If I sell my house, I might walk away with something near like $1 million. But what can I buy with $1 million? So what happens is we've got a lot of single people who are sort of overhoused, who are living alone in buildings that could support more people, but there's no facility that they can move into here, except for Belmont Village, which is a very high-priced rental, which doesn't provide any security in your old age. So we need to do, if that's a population that's growing fast, we have to think about how to accommodate them in a way that also might free up housing for younger people. The other thing that I wanted to raise, and Margie touched on this a little bit, the goal of owning your own house is very central to American life. And therefore, we've constructed a lot of our benefits around home ownership. There are tax benefits. There's the opportunity to acquire equity. There's the opportunity to accumulate intergenerational wealth, which helps for the next generation. It provides help for education. It does a great many things. We have a history in this city of preventing African Americans and other minorities from owning homes in this city. Redlining really is partly responsible for why we have such a low proportion of African Americans in this community. And that wasn't subtle. That was absolutely explicit. And while the feds are talking about reparations for slavery, I think we have to talk about reparations for redlining. We have to make it easier for populations that were not allowed to live in Albany to be able to buy homes. But instead, what we're talking about is building apartments. And that creates lots of intergenerational wealth for developers and landlords, but it doesn't do very much for renters. I think, I know a lot of people in the African-American community are looking to buy houses. They don't want to rent for their whole lives and have their rents go up and never accumulate anything. And again, I speak from experience because I grew up in a rental and my parents never had anything as a result. They never accumulated any money at all. So I think we have to look at ways to make it possible for lower income people to buy houses. That could include a land trust. That could include low interest or even no interest loans for people in certain populations. We could do a variety of things to make that available. And I am concerned because it seems like the state is only looking at things that are owned by other people than the people who live in them. We have to make it possible for people to own things. And I would like to see the housing element speak to that possibility rather than just simply ignore single family homes as some kind of remnant of the past. It doesn't have to be that way. I guess that's all I want to say right now. Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for that presentation. I also saw your presentation to the City Council, and they were clear and helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna call on you next, Jim. I just wanted to take a moment to also, I wanted to provide some comments, and I think throughout, like, I also agree, Barry, that it was a really helpful presentation. I would love to have a copy of it, but we have YouTube, so so I definitely plan to talk about it in the community groups that I'm part of. And I think that the information, especially on kind of the breakdown of population in Albany, is really important. A couple things that came to mind for me, and some of the comments about, you know, Section 8 housing. How is it that we expand our, you know, expand Albany to be a place for lots of different people? I think Albany feels like a place for certain people, and particularly I want to name anti-Black racism that exists and is so prevalent in the city of Albany and can be witnessed by a declining population, Black population in Albany. I wanted I feel that it's really important, and I've done this before, but I feel it's really important for us to look at the reality of what took place in Albany. I'm going to share my screen. I actually originally saw this from Rochelle Nason, who's on our board, but this was from 32, and it says here, in 1932, racial restrictions expired, right? But infiltration of undesirables is a possibility. And up here it says strong community sentiment against infiltration of this word that I am not going to say. And then it says here, this designation of NEGRO, and it says no. And it has no percentage. And so these realities of the city of Albany are really important for us to face, remind ourselves of, and realize that this is the work of a city, this is a work of a government, is to do everything possible to deal with, face that past. We can't move forward without looking back, and make plans based on that very painful past. The one thing that I wanted to say, the last thing you said on the slide had to do with a process. I think it was called affirmatively further fair housing. And one thing that I want to say is that including Black and Brown people in this conversation is critical. It's how you get people involved, is you ask them, you create a forum that encourages, you know, diverse populations. You go to the Black Parents group, which is part of this Albany School District. You visit Familias Latinas, which is a parent group that I can connect you with if you'd like. And you talk to them about housing and learn and build involvement through direct communication and involvement of those families. Jim?
Okay, well, Barry, did you want to respond to either of those before I say anything?
I just want to thank both Bart and Chair Zapata for their comments and remarks, and would love to follow up with each of you on the things you've just talked about, because we want to address the issues that you brought up. And I appreciate that you mentioned those here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up on that. The introduction to the various groups, would be enormously grateful for that, and perhaps we can figure out a way to do that.
Okay, so my comments are, first of all, I absolutely loved what Bart and KZ had to say. Just couldn't agree more. So one thing I wanted to say, I have a number of things also. I thought Buck's comments on, I'm a financial coach. I work with people who are trying to buy a house and figure it out. It's nasty right now. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. But one thing is that, condos are seen as this evil, evil thing, but it can be an entry into home ownership. And so that may be a thing that instead of building it along with Bart's idea and KZ's ideas, instead of building maybe a rental place, you build a low income condo place that is, quality units, but that are affordable. And then people could then purchase them instead of having to be lifelong renters. So I just thought I'd throw that idea in there. I live in a condo. I think my condo is worth only like $550 right now. And so it's, it's a lower entry for people than, $1.3 million house or something. Second thing, the nasty truth is that redlining is not a thing of the past. If you go look at studies where they run where they run tests, so they send in a person of color and say, hey, I'd like to buy this place or I'd like to rent this place. And a rather shockingly high percentage of time, whoever's selling it or whoever's renting it says, oh gosh, we're done, right? Oh, we just rented this place, or they choose to sell it to somebody else. The only way to know this, because the victim of this crime, it's a crime, the victim of the crime doesn't really know that they're being lied to, is to do these tests. And so it's enforcement. And I believe I think HUD does them, but I'm not absolutely sure about the modern form of this. But I would suggest, if we're serious about this, that we do it and that we let people know that we're doing it. And that might just, make them think twice about doing that. I don't know how widespread it is, but I'll bet you it's a lot more widespread than people think of. And people make excuses for that, but, so there's that. Okay, I live on Albany Hill here at Gateview. So this vacant lot next to us is part of the very beautiful Albany Hill. And people walk through it all the time. That part and if you look at the map, it would basically cut pretty much half of Albany Hill would just be eaten. I could live with that. And in fact, when people last time they tried to build something a year ago, maybe, or 2 years ago, I don't know, time's weird when you get old, but, and people were up in arms here at Gateview. And I was actually saying, look, we need the housing. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But when I look at the map, Barry and Jeff, it showed that you actually don't need that housing. You don't need to rezone Albany Hill and take away half of Albany Hill in order to meet the city's requirements. So I would urge you to think twice about that. I wasn't an activist against it because I actually kind of have mixed feelings, but they turned, I don't know, something like 500 people showed up on almost no notice to argue against that happening because they didn't want the hill to be cut in half like that and lose so much open space when we don't have that much in the city already. So it is when you're trying to govern a city, you're always juggling things. And so you're juggling an environmental impact with and it is privately owned lot, of course. So then there's legal aspects to that too. You can't just take somebody's property, of course. That's, well known. So there's lots of issues. I'm not saying it's simple, but I would just say, maybe think twice about that, is all I'm saying. Okay, in section 5, 6, and 5, 7 of this, I don't know, 150, 200 page report, I couldn't read the whole thing. It talked about stakeholders, and I just thought I'd let you know that there appears to be some kind of Albany tenants unit forming. They have a Facebook group, at least. And I would say they absolutely need to be a stakeholder that you're partnering with. Because the closest thing we have is any representation at all in the city of Albany for renters. I'm not a renter, but renters are, what unions do is they equalize power a little bit. That's what they do. They equalize power a little bit. And right now renters have kind of zero. They got nothing. They have zero power. And so this group, wherever you land politically on the question of rent control and these sorts of things, they should be at the table. All right, so it's the new Albany Tenants Union. It's information, and I can connect you with them via, also if you get a hold of me. Okay. I found that the document was really hard to make sense of. I'm not a housing expert. Housing is not my thing. But man, there's an awful lot of charts with an awful lot of text there. And might be nice if there was, I really liked the charts where it had like actual, like what's our status on that? That was like the most useful to me to tell how we've been doing and what we're going to try to do in the future. If there was some kind of executive summary for like regular folk in this thing, it might be kind of nice, so that it's more accessible to non-housing experts, and for people who don't have to read, 200 pages. Is that how big it is? That was my guess.
Okay, Jim, your 2 minutes is almost
Sorry.
up.
Okay. So, so there's that. And then the last thing is, the last two things real quick, 30 seconds each, hopefully. I sort of agree that however you pronounce it, RHNA shouldn't include University Village. We don't provide any services there except for fire services. Let's be real. They do go to our schools, right? They are part of our school system, but that's kind of it. And so I would rather that we sort of be held accountable for building what's there without trying to, get special deals with the state or something like that. That's personally, I agree with Margie on that one. And the last thing is, I thought the housing element, what I read, was actually pretty good. I'm just making some suggestions. That doesn't mean I think it's bad. I think it's quite good. It's very impressive. The city really needs to implement the darn thing. So hopefully the council will take it very, very seriously and highly prioritize it, because I've got kids, and like everybody else, they're having a hard time with the housing thing. So, and that's it for me.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Jeremiah?
Yeah, hi. I'll try to keep mine down to 2 minutes.
Can we get the shuttle to the stringer, please?
Sorry, but the last people talked for over 5 minutes. So I have a couple questions, I think, here. Housing is an interesting topic. I mean, the only way to afford a house is to have a good job. So it starts with jobs. If the city were to create more jobs, possibly some more city jobs, and create some more housing. I noticed there you said moderate, low, and very low income categories. I was wondering if there's a number put on that. What is a very low place to rent? $1,000, $500, $1,500? What's low? 2,000? What's moderate? 3,000? I mean, what are the numbers? Because just saying, low income housing, I there's probably numbers to it. But then when you offer these units, let's say it's a very low income category, there's got to be a maximum amount you could charge for rent on a very low income house. So we should be talking numbers. And let's say an ADU is low or very low. So what's the maximum someone can charge for an ADU? So it's about pricing. You were saying that in the past 10 years, we've only built less than 100 housing units. That's about 10 per year. And you want to set a goal to build 1,000 units in the next 8 years. Well, that's about 120 per year. You know, so something's got to make more incentive for homeowners to build ADUs or to build additions on their house, to build more housing in that way. So maybe, you know, Jeff, maybe the city could reduce the application fees for ADUs. You know, instead of that $1,234.56, you know, maybe the application fee could be reduced 50% to encourage, you know, people wanting to build ADUs. Because that might disencourage people wanting to build ADUs because that initial cost. And thank you, Rosemary Malarkey, for asking the question about studios or ADUs. Does that count? That was on my notes. I was going to ask the same thing. Glad you mentioned it. So we talk about student housing. What about educator housing? Housing for teachers? You know, that's something, right? Your students, teachers, some teachers can't afford to live in Albany, yet they teach in Albany, but they get paid a salary from the school board that's set. You know, we should reserve some housing set aside for educators, for some school teachers. That way our teachers could live in Albany, in our community, and be more involved in our community every day. Instead of spending time after school teaching all day, stuck in traffic to drive back to Antioch or whatever for 2 hours and then go grade paperwork. You know, so we don't want teachers having to commute. We want teachers to feel welcome, that they could live in our city. And it said Bay Area region. That's kind of vague. There's a lot of different counties in the Bay Area. It was saying like 400,000 or 100,000 units needed to be built in the Bay Area region. I mean, does that include San Jose? Does that include, you know, Marin? The Bay Area? I don't know. It's hard to understand because it just says Bay Area region. Like, what does that mean? And then I have one more thing on my notes here. Is that you're right. It looks like, you know, the city wants to, hold on, let me rephrase this. You mentioned in your presentation homelessness and housing for everybody, all community members. You know, there's people that do sleep in their cars, right? But the city right now is not making the people that sleep in their cars feel very welcome. Just this week, the city put up signs, you know, at the library saying that people can't park their cars after 10 p.m., between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And that's just to go after people sleeping in their cars. So it's like the city discourages people to house themselves the best they can. You know, and that's discrimination. It's like the city is picking on people who are at their lowest state, who are trying to do their best, but the city makes it difficult for them to, you know, sleep in their cars. I mean, how outrageous is that, right? You can't park in your car after 10 p.m. at the library. You know, city council meetings go past 10 p.m. So what, you're going to get a ticket after 10 p.m. because you're on the city council meeting using 24-hour Wi-Fi? No, that sign was put there just to harass people, like people who sleep in their cars. So we gotta create safe places for people that sleep in their cars or vans. There's a lot of unseen people. You know, a lot of people are embarrassed they sleep in their car, right? So I thought the library was one of the safe places to sleep in your car. I thought it was part of the route, you know. So anyway, hopefully we can create some safe places for people of all of our community, even people who sleep on the sidewalk in tents. You know, let them camp somewhere. underneath the freeway. We're already paying, this is the last thing I want to say, just 30 more seconds, please. We're already paying Caltrans X amount of dollars to lease the overflow parking, the commute parking area underneath the freeway. And it's open every day and it's free, I think, still. But that could be somewhere where people park and sleep at night, right? Underneath the freeway. You can have a security guard there and people could sleep in their cars, commuters driving on the freeway, they get tired. So I just wish that we would utilize the spaces we have, like underneath the freeway, to allow temporary housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wondered, Kathy, I'm not sure if you had any comments, but I think the council or the commission, the commission is all commented now. Kathy, did you want to say anything? Okay, I think I'm going to close this.
I have one last thing to add. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Chair KZ. I just wanted to mention ADA housing. What about housing specifically for ADA people? Thank you.
All right. So Barry and Jeff, thank you so much for your visit. You know, we look forward to continuing this work. It's obviously not a small job and lots of work to do in our city, but thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Look forward to keeping you posted as we make some progress. And like I said, those connections that you can make for us, we'd be grateful for that.
All right. Thank you. Good night. So we're going to move to our next agenda item. This is 6.1, which is a conversation or talk about the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. I know that I believe Isabel is here to, we're going to discuss recommendations. And just as a reminder on this process that we are one of a couple different of the city's bodies that talk and discuss the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. So welcome, Isabel, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. And let me just get set up here. So, okay, so yes, so the item before you this evening is the SCJC is to prepare a recommendation to the City Council for the use of sugar-sweetened beverage tax proceeds for fiscal year 2023. So this is July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. A little bit of background on SSB, which is how I'm going to call the sugar-sweetened beverage tax from now on. In November 2016, Albany voters approved Measure 01, and it's a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. Per the ordinance language, the council shall hold a study session annually in conjunction with the city's budget process to receive input and recommendations regarding the expenditure of proceeds from the tax and solicit recommendations from a number of organizations, including some city advisory bodies, one of which is the SEJC, as well as recommendations from the Albany Unified School District and individuals with specialized expertise in areas such as public health issues and programs relating to diabetes, obesity, and sugar drink consumption. So the council approved the fiscal year 2022, which is the fiscal year we're in right now. They've approved the sugar-sweetened beverage tax expenditure plan, which is included in your staff report as attachment 2. It includes expenditures for continued funding for the Crossing Guard program, the Healthy Me Music and Movement program, which teaches preschool, transition kindergarten, and kindergarten students the importance of good nutrition, drinking water, fitness, hygiene, and social skills. The bike safety program also has been funded this year, which teaches 4th and 5th grade students street riding. New programs approved include AUSD's Albany Swims, which is a pilot program which teaches 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders basic swimming skills. And also included is partial funding for a Move and Groove event to promote outdoor exercise and mental wellness. So the Social and Economic Justice Commission, your task tonight is to prepare a recommendation on what you think the sugar-sweetened beverage tax proceeds should be used for. We estimate that we'll receive about $260,000 in sugar-sweetened beverage tax proceeds in fiscal year 2023. Per the voter-approved ordinance, the sugar-sweetened beverage tax is a general fund revenue that the City Council aims to apply towards for specific purposes related to health and well-being, and approved expenditures are incorporated into the city's annual operating budget. And the council will consider recommendations for the SSB tax proceed at a study session tentatively scheduled for the first meeting in May. I've also attached to your staff report the SCJC's SSB recommendation from last year for your information. And the SSB ordinance is also attached. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Before we go into this, I actually want to get some public comment. And so why don't we open the floor? If you are in the public and would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. All right. So I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to move us back to the commission and open the floor for some questions or comments. I myself would like to start off saying, you know, we didn't do too well last time. None of our recommendations made it anywhere. But that doesn't mean it's not an important process, and we are one of 3 different bodies. So just a reminder, I wanted, as the chair, to remind us of this process, that we are by no means deciding tonight on where this money is going, especially, you know, Kathy, you're new to the commission, but we're not tonight deciding. We're one of 3 commissions that entertains this question, weighs in, and then ultimately council decides. So just some framing for tonight's conversation. And then, you know, I see Bart's hand, and anyone else who would like to comment can raise their hand.
Okay, can I comment? Isabel, the thing that I'm thinking about is that if you look at the things that council approved the last time around, none of them are one-time things. They're all continuing expenses. So I'm wondering if it's kind of futile for us to be making recommendations. The crossing guard thing, for example, which is a big chunk, that's not going away. And I'm not sure that council's ready to abandon it for something we would recommend. So I don't want to participate in an exercise here that is meaningless because council's already made up its mind.
Yeah, I can't really speak to what council will decide, you know, based on the study session. The study session that they will be holding in May is to receive the recommendations from the advisory bodies as well as members of the public. And it's really up to them to decide what, you know, based on what they hear, what they want to fund with SSB proceeds next year.
Yeah, Jim?
one question. I do have some comments, of course. Isn't there more money, substantially more money this year than last year? Wasn't it like 170 or something like that last year? And this year you said something like 260, or have I got my numbers just wrong?
No, I think it's been pretty steady every year.
So maybe it was
you may
270 last year and 270 this year. Then okay.
Yeah, or you may have seen like a partial number because it takes us a little bit of time to update the numbers.
Yeah.
But all the numbers are on the city website and they've been updated.
Okay, but they're we don't have a chunk more money. Okay. So I was actually thinking along the lines of Bart's thing, which is like basically, maybe we should move through this kind of quickly and then get on with something where we can actually make a difference. But I did want to point out that everything that they chose last year was all about either safety or exercise. 100% of the money went to safety or exercise. None of them went to nutrition, as far as I could tell. And it was unclear from an equity perspective, how that money was being spent. Some possible ideas would be something like classes for parents and kids on healthy cooking, and healthy cooking and healthy eating, because there was nothing about nutrition there. I'm a bit of a health nut, and nutrition is kind of important. So there was that. And then the other stuff that I have is more like, who are we kidding? The council's going to do what they're going to do. So it's just recommendations that about certain things be done with regard to equity and diversity and inclusivity. So one idea is that programs should prioritize lower income areas and people consciously. Second thing is, for instance, with crossing guards, the most noisy parents might be the ones in the most well-to-do areas. That doesn't mean that the less noisy parents shouldn't get the same amount or even more crossing guard support, right? If that makes sense. I think, do you know if these programs had what kind of scholarships they offered for each of these programs? What was the cost to the families to use these programs? I don't know if you know or not. But
which programs are you talking about?
The various exercise programs. Obviously not crossing guard scholarships, but the exercise programs. What did they cost the families, or were they all completely 100% free to everybody, or was there some cost and the city was subsidizing the cost?
Are you talking about AUSD's swimming classes?
There were 3 or 4 programs that were not crossing guard programs. All of them were exercise based. Do you happen to know if any of them, what they charged families? If you don't know, that's okay. I don't expect you to know everything.
I don't know about the AUSD swimming classes because I have not gotten the report from them yet on how the class went. But I can say that for the music and movement class, those were free to the families.
Okay, great. And in that case, it would be maybe some outreach to language minorities or to lower income households that might not even know something existed because all that happened was a postcard in the mail or it was in the catalog or something like that. So that would be something to think about. And the other thing is that maybe some cultural variety. There's a wonderful group in Sacramento and Oakland that does hip hop for kids. And I was a teacher for a long time. And at least at the high school I taught at, when you ask kids what was their favorite kind of music, all the kids of all different stripes said hip hop, rap, right? And so they might think about some cultural variety, like, having hip hop classes or salsa classes or something, So it was, most of my ideas had more to do with administration of existing programs and thinking from an equity lens on the existing programs than rather proposing new ones when probably the other one's just going to get funded again, right? Is what's probably going to happen. So to have some kind of impact, that was the sort of thing I was thinking about.
Yeah, I'd like to build off that. I actually I want to suggest that actually be the focus from the SCJC, because I don't think, our track record given last year, we really recommended the rent relief and laundry, the laundry program and things like that. And I actually think it might be interesting what comes from SCJC is more recommendations around the type of outreach that happens, the type of programming that we encourage. That actually came out of the SCJC early on, which was to have outreach materials in multiple languages, specifically Spanish. We do have a Spanish-speaking Latino population in the city of Albany. And so that's a very important, to have city materials translated is a very important thing for Spanish-speaking families. I actually would suggest that what comes out of the SCJC is an encouragement to focus on outreaching via the public schools, in particular, in multiple languages. So flyers to kids, flyers in multiple languages about these classes, and then different culture, what we call perhaps cultural variety of programming. And so that actually, I would suggest that be the wording that comes from the SCJC, rather than the rent program or something. I see Jeremiah's hand.
Hi, great. Yeah, I'd like to get a chance to throw in my 2 cents here. So, what's our budget? So you said we're one of 3 commissions. What are the other 2?
The Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission, as well as the Transportation Commission.
That makes sense. Okay. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about that $72,000?
The city anticipates having $260,000 available in SSB tax proceeds for next fiscal year.
Yeah, I know that's the grand total, but what are we working with? What do we get to budget from? Because they got to pay crossing guards. That's 120,000. So that's 200 something minus 120. So there's 120 left. So we're working from less than 120,000. So what's our budget?
The commission does not have a budget.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
We're one of 3 groups that give recommendations. And you remember last year we gave 2 recommendations, and neither of those, that's the basis of tonight's comments. What Bart talked about, Jim talked about.
I was wondering, because I was watching the Parks and Open Space Recreation and the other one, and there was a budget. It was like $72,000. Because there's a grand total of the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. That's a 200 something thousand. And then the crossing guards takes away 100 something thousand. So there's only 100 something thousand left to split between 3 commissions. So it would be nice to know our total budget, and then maybe we could split it between the 3 evenly. So we know what to recommend. Because
can I address that?
No, wait.
Hold on.
Okay.
So it's kind of tough because we're all going to try to go for the maximum of what's left. And I think, for anything to pass, we can't be greedy and selfish and ask for too much. So we got to kind of limit ourselves to maybe, I thought it's $72,000. I don't know why I'm not getting an answer back, but there was a remaining balance to go from. So anyway, all right. So what we should do with the money is it's about health and well-being. So even though it's a general fund, it's supposed to be for health and well-being. And for health, what do we do? You know, I'd really like to see some more water fountains on Solano. You know, that's social justice and social and economic justice, because it's offering free water. You know, if we can't get those water filling stations, I'd like to see a free water machine at the city hall, just like the one that's at Sprouts. You could pay $1 and get some fresh water. Well, let's put one of those up at the city hall and have it be free for our community. You know, the machines only kind of cost $1,000. So that's something we can accomplish. You know, we could recommend, and then those water machines, we can put them at the parks, and that encourages people to drink water. You know, I'd love to see an ice machine somewhere for free ice. So anyway, I really want to see more water around Albany, more water filling stations, water drinking fountains, and maybe some scholarships or some housing vouchers, you know, emergency housing vouchers. So it's hard to recommend something, you know, when we don't know kind of exactly what our budget is or what we're working with. So just to finish my sentence here, you know, I'm trying to think social justice. What do we do with this money and a social justice viewpoint? You know, I think the best thing we can do is offer free water for our entire community. Maybe we could put one of those water machines at the city hall. I mean, at the library, community center. You know, maybe an ice machine. That'd be really nice.
Jim, if you have, I'm not sure if we want to do a motion or something of the like, but if you have a motion, I would encourage you to make it.
Well, what I've done is I've tracked all the suggestions people have had, and I thought we could see if we had consensus or if we should just vote on them. I did want to attempt to say to Jeremiah that we don't have a budget at all. We have $0 to spend on this. The council will decide where all of the money goes, and we just can recommend to them what we think would be the best way to spend the money. But we don't have a budget. Somebody was doing some math in another meeting, but none of the commissions have a budget. We're making recommendations to council. I hope that helps. So the various proposals are like a healthy cooking, eating class, that programs prioritize lower income areas, and well, actually, I think the scholarship slots idea is meaningless if all the programs are free, but the programs are free or they have, you know, scholarships. Outreach, like serious outreach, serious and determined outreach to lower income communities and language minorities, and some cultural variety, you know, along the lines of hip hop, rap, salsa. I thought of the, you know, quinceañera dance might be fun for like people who aren't Mexican, you know, it's still kind of a cool thing if you've ever seen one of them. So, you know, some cultural variety would be really, really good. And then I liked Jeremiah's idea about the water machines, water fountains, for what it's worth. Emergency housing vouchers, I just don't think the council, I don't think there's a chance that the council will approve that. They've made that pretty clear. They want stuff to be about diabetes and obesity. Yeah, I can make a motion. I will move that we not recommend any particular program, but that instead we ask that the council mandate that these programs be administered through an equity lens, and specifically that they'll target lower income areas and lower income people very deliberately. That there be cultural variety in these programs, and that there be serious and determined outreach to lower income communities and language minorities. So that's my motion.
Bart?
I want to second that.
Is there any comments or discussion? I think we do that after a seconded motion, correct? Okay.
You after the second, you can say any further discussions.
Okay. Any further discussion? Thank you, Anne. Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote? No?
Yes. Commissioner Garrett Penguillo?
Yeah, I didn't know we were voting on anything tonight. I thought we were just shouting out ideas, but
yes, you're basically you're discussing for recommendations to recommend the city council. So it'd be helpful to have a motion.
Okay, sure. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you, and thank you, Jim Lindsay, for appreciating my water machine idea.
Commissioner Grossman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay?
Yes.
Commissioner Rye? Commissioner Rye, are you there? Commissioner Rye's vote will be absent, and Chair Zapata?
Yes.
The motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 6.2, which is our subcommittee reports. And as a reminder, this is the subcommittees are, if you look at the agenda, there's new language included. Thank you, Anne, for helping us to be kind of have more specificity in the work that's happening in these subcommittees. The subcommittees are really the driver, ideally, of the work that's happening in this commission. It means we're able to vet ideas and bring them back for public comment, for others in the commission to weigh in on and give feedback on. And if you notice, there are 5. And so it can be a fairly lengthy process, but it's also, I think, been a helpful tool for us. So
I just have a process question.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're giving these reports, are we reporting specifically on what our subcommittee has been doing, or are we talking about just in general kind of ideas that we have?
I think that the idea was that this kind of closes the loop on communication with the public. This commission is a public body, and so from what I understand, we're doing updates, and then any decisions or ideas, we're vetting those so that they make it through this and to council, ideally, eventually. So this is the sort of filter through which ideas are, sort of born, sprout, and ideally flower into,
Okay, so we're talking about specifically what our committee has been doing and.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Uh-huh. All right. So the first subcommittee we're going to hear from is the Racial Equity Subcommittee, and it's the 3 bullet points underneath are recommendations on specific policies and practices based on the Racial Equity Plan, which is really the focus of that subcommittee and what we're working on right now. Jim is the convener, and so Jim, I'll let you give us an update.
Okay. So we're kind of working on 2 things at the moment. I believe the fiscal year is coming up quite soon. There's going to have to be a budget done for this next fiscal year. And because that deadline is coming up, we do want to get a recommendation to council about like leaving space in it for an equity officer so that we can actually seriously implementing the racial equity impact plan. We're not ready to do that tonight, but hopefully we'll be ready to do it in our May meeting. I wonder, Anne, if we do that in our May meeting, is that in enough time for council to utilize that recommendation?
I'm sorry, which recommendation?
If we were to recommend in the May meeting that council leave room in the budget for the possibility of hiring an equity officer to focus on to have staff focus on implementing the racial equity impact plan.
So I may need to double check, and I could be wrong, but I believe it is a 2-year budget that was passed last year. So this is this is year 2 of the 2-year budget.
Oh.
So I mean,
although there's no new budget coming up, actually.
Not next month.
Well, not for a year, right?
Right. Or close to a year, because they're not going to discuss right at,
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's important for us. And the other thing that we're working on is a equity statement, because it's one of the items in the racial equity impact plan. And we're sort of trying to take the easiest to implement first, and sort of work our way through with recommendations to council. We do very much feel like an equity officer at some point is just kind of necessary if we're really going to make this happen. So if we're really going to implement that plan. That's it for us.
Thank you. Bart.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jim, that there's, even if the budget is 2 years, there's no reason why you can't recommend an equity officer. It may take a year to happen, but it's still an important recommendation, I think.
Yes, that's what you can always make recommendation at different times. It doesn't have to be right before the budget. And, just like all the advisory bodies, sometimes it takes a few meetings before council can make decision.
Yeah, there's also election coming up in November that can affect timing and stuff. So, but thank you both. That's a really good point. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and unless there are any other comments, I think that's an update, and I don't see any other hands. So thank you. We're going to move to the next committee.
Chair, there is a member of the public. Did you want to take?
Oh yeah.
Public comment.
That's what we did last
subcommittee.
Time. Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
Opening the floor for public comment, there is a hand, and we'll bring in the speaker.
Hi, this is Margie Marks again. From the subcommittee, can you explain to me why, as a citizen of Albany, I would care if we have an equity officer in our city? What exactly would they do, and why should I give a shit? Excuse my language, but thank you. That's it.
Margie Marks, keeping it real. Okay.
Casey, you want to handle that, or me, or what?
I mean, I can.
Please.
I think I want to say that we're really working in this subcommittee. We're really working on the plan that Nicole Anderson developed, because this was a public process. It was something that was started, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. It was a very urgent process that a lot of community members showed up to, and through that process, this position was identified. One of the things that has been a conversation in our subcommittee is that, anti-Black racism is very real in the city of Albany. We've heard stories. I mean, frankly, this subcommittee is populated by also Sierra, a Black woman who lives in the city of Albany as well. And we've heard directly from her about stories of her experiences. And so having a designated officer would provide staffing, and a lot of the stuff that we discuss in this subcommittee requires staff work. It requires work on behalf of the city of Albany. It requires someone to run a survey, someone to develop a plan to move the needle on what we learn from the survey. It isn't just about collecting data. It's then creating a campaign for Black and brown people to feel safe in businesses. Maybe there are businesses that are given posters to hang up that, give a sense of inclusivity and belonging. And so really the idea is that with a staff person holding this lens and looking and developing programs, our city would become a place where Black and brown people feel like they belong and they're included here. I see Bart's hand and then Jim's.
A couple of things that I think an equity officer could do in the city. First of all, complaints. There has to be a place where those can be taken. Second of all, liaison with the various sub-communities in this city would be important. Third of all, there's a requirement that when new legislation is presented, it's supposed to be reviewed for equity and inclusion. But that doesn't happen. And when it does, it's often very rudimentary because the people who do it don't have that specialization. So, and then the identification of areas in policy and practice that are racist and need to be revised. That's a significant job for a person. It's not, it's not de minimis. It's important that there be somebody to do these things, and there hasn't been.
Jim?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I'm guessing that Margie's point is that, so I'm going to speak for you, Margie, with all serious apologies. But what I sort of think I heard was, do we think that if we hire an equity officer, we're done? Oh, hell no, right? But having an equity officer, having somebody, connected to reporting to the assistant city manager or the city manager who's in City Hall, day after day and is working in the community, can work with the community and with this commission and help us really move the needle. As opposed to right now, it's really hard. Everybody has jobs, or well, some of us don't have jobs, but we're not pros at this, and it's hard to do this just as three commissioners, so having a group like Albany Uprising or the group at Albany High School, the anti-racist group there, and then together with the staff person and the commission together, just gives sort of three different prongs for making real change. And I like very much what Bart and Casey said too, by the way.
Thank you. Jeremiah?
Yeah, so just the term equity officer, it could be misleading to some people, including myself. Makes me think that has something to do with the police department, that they're an officer. So an officer, that's pretty official sounding title. The only officers I know in Albany are the police officers. So is there a better name or a term for this equity manager or equity something? Because if it's an officer, that could maybe go in with the police task force commission, the new one that's going to go up, and that could be part of one of the check and balances with that commission. having a equity officer. I don't know. I was just confused by the name equity officer. It makes me think it's a police officer. And if we have an equity officer, where's their office going to be? Where's their desk? And you know, can the public walk in and set up an appointment and say hi and meet with them? It's just where they're going to work from.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate the public comment, and we're going to move on to the next committee, which is the Mental Health Subcommittee. This is Bart, Will, and Jeremiah. And Bart, I believe you're the convener, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I reported this to Jeremiah and to Will as well. 3 meetings ago, the city council basically referred mental health services to the staff. And I wrote to Anne and asked her what the implications were of that. And she said, mental health services is being addressed at the council level with direction to staff on next steps. If you'd like, as a mental health subcommittee convener, please share with SCJC under mental health subcommittee report at the next SCJC meeting with a recommendation that the subcommittee be paused or sunset for the time being as SCJC sees appropriate. So I'm not sure whether we wanted to do that exactly, but it does make sense, I think, perhaps to suspend the committee until the staff does its work so that we can review that work. But right now, for us to work on the same issues in parallel play, it really doesn't make sense to me. Jeremiah?
Yeah. So let's see, Jeremiah?
Yeah, so you know, I'm in shock, right? Wanting to sunset the mental health subcommittee? I mean, talk about going backwards. I mean, what's wrong with letting us just stay what we are and us doing our own research and us trying our best to help out and bring something to the table and add to it. But if city council wants to do it all by themselves, you know, then why do they even ask us for help? Why do they even ask us for advice? It's kind of strange. You know, I know what's going on.
Sure.
They're just going to delay until the end of the year. There's no meeting in August, and then in September, and then it's over. They're just delaying, and then nothing's going to ever happen. But we can't let mental health be sunsetted. We can't let one more day go by without a mental health solution. Mental health cannot be procrastinated on. It's one of the most important topics. Now, I suggest everybody go online and look at Alameda County Behavioral Health Program. And that's what we should do. We should just refer anybody in Albany having mental health issues. You call that 1-800 number, go straight to the county. And they have over 100 different programs. They've got housing, they've got education, they've got activities.
That's exactly what we are doing.
I think we should continue our subcommittee. We shouldn't be sunsetted, and let us still do our work and do our research. That way, when it comes time, we have our research and we have gathered our information. Then we can make an educated recommendation to council when the time comes. But if you pause, you're slowing the process. Thanks for your time.
I'm not sure, you know, yeah, like in terms of a process forward, I think that Bart, I remember, I think I was at that meeting because there's been a lot of conversation about this in relation to policing as well. And so I'm not really sure how to, like, if we're doing a vote or what, but, one thing that comes to mind is if there are people that want to continue to develop this, they can continue to do that work. I think, Bart, I mean, perhaps in your opinion, it doesn't look like an effective use of time, which, to me, I think your argument is clear, so that if Jeremiah and Will want to continue, they can. That's what I would suggest. So, how does that sound, Bart?
Well, I mean, in practice, I don't have a problem with that, but we either have a subcommittee or we don't have a subcommittee.
Yeah. Well, perhaps there's a subcommittee of two.
Well, that would, if we want to continue with a subcommittee, but as I say, I do have this communication from Ann saying we ought to either pause because since in fact it is being handled at the council level. Now we could, I suppose, ask for further clarification. And I really do think that there are issues in mental health that we should work on, but I would like, if staff is doing this work, I would like to see what they do before we do the same thing. As I know that they've been directed to, for example, to come up with alternatives for emergency services. And we would come up with the same alternatives because there are only a limited number. So anyway, that either way is fine with me.
Jim?
I mean, council handles everything. And council sends everything to staff when they want to get anything done anyway. So the fact of mental health is the council is in control of mental health and is asking staff to do stuff. It's just the way that's the way the city works. But in particular, if we do know that staff is doing something like what you just said, then it wouldn't make sense for a subcommittee to do that too, because that would just be a waste of your own time, right? But there may be other things that the commission wants to recommend to council, other than what specifically staff has been told to come back to council with. So, if people feel like their time is being well utilized because they're coming up with some ideas and sending those ideas on to council, I think it makes sense. But if the only thing you were going to work on was something that the staff, is now working on, it would make sense to wait until they have a recommendation and then review the recommendation, right? So I agree either one would, it sort of makes sense. I don't know how Commissioner Boehnen feels about this. But I guess I'm done.
Yeah, Bart?
I think that, I haven't been able to get Commissioner Boehnen to respond to me in terms of meeting possibilities. So I imagine he's very busy being the senior at this point. I thought that the most important thing for us as a beginning, as for a mental health subcommittee, was to get a picture of what exactly is available from Alameda Behavioral Health to people who live in Albany, and also what their notions were about how people were to access them, and the whole issue of mobile crisis, which is the biggest one on my mind, because clearly the county's mobile crisis service doesn't work. But that's one of the things that the council has specifically asked staff to come up with a recommendation about. that's why I think, if they were to make a presentation with that, now they're saying they won't even talk to us until July, which says something to me about how committed they are. Maybe the council would be able to get more out of the county than we've been able to. But if we can't get a picture of what they're providing till July, how are we going to discuss what's missing? So anyway, I find that very frustrating.
Well, again, I think what we're debating here is the kind of efficacy of continuing to meet as a subcommittee. And what I hear is there are some people that, Jeremiah and specifically, I mean, Will's not here, that is interested in continuing to meet, right? And then, so I don't know. My guess is that if there are people that want to continue to meet, even, they see it as worthwhile, then they should continue to meet. And if you don't, then, I don't think we can argue that tonight. I think you making a judicious decision, like, this is strategically not the way you want to use your energy right now because it's not effective. So that makes sense to me. So, that's what I would recommend, Bart, if you're amenable to it, is pulling away from the committee until you see it being an effective use of your time. And then those who want to continue to meet can.
That's fine with me. I will simply resign from the subcommittee but then we have to decide if the subcommittee continues. And that's actually, I'm inclined to think, Casey, that's your call.
Okay. Jeremiah, did you have a comment?
Yeah. So basically, Bart, that's fine. But I'm still doing research, and I want the community's input. Last meeting, even Bart, we proposed, it was Bart's idea to have a workshop
session, yeah.
Listening sessions. Thank you, Bart, help me out there. Listening session at the community center, for the public. Whatever happened to that? Because Bart came up with a great idea, we presented it, and nothing happened. So that's the problem. We come up with great ideas. We want the community's input, but either city staff or somewhere it gets lost in translation. So I still want to have that listening session at the community center, please. And then that way we can come back to city council and be like, look, city council, we got, 10, 20, 100 people's opinion. And this is what people think, kind of little miniature interviews in a way. So that's why I want to continue this, because there's still a lot of work to be done. Right now is not the time to just give up.
Jim?
I don't think this commission sent a recommendation to council about a listening session.
No.
And that's the only way we can get council to do anything, is we have to send a recommendation. So if you and Jeremiah and Bart, if the two of you agree on that, it would be, this is on the agenda. You could make a motion right now to recommend that to council. We could vote on that, and that motion will go to council. What they do with it is up to them, but yeah, I think it's a good idea, frankly.
Okay.
I'll vote yes.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to city council for a listening session or workshop at the community center this month or next month.
On mental health, right?
On mental health, yep.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? Bart?
I still think it's a good idea to have a listening session, but it's a matter of when's the right time to do that. If it were up to me now, because the staff is working on this and the council's waiting for that, I would like to see the staff's recommendations. I would like to bring those to the community. My experience has been, except when there's something really pressing, like as was the case with the listening sessions around the Floyd murder. I think listening sessions work best if there's something for people to react to. Bringing a bunch of people together and saying, what do you think about mental health? I don't think will give us what we need. But again, I think it's a good idea to do it. I'm just not sure this is quite the moment.
I think the sooner the better, and we can't keep procrastinating on mental health. Maybe we can have a list of 20 questions and we can have a survey as part of it. And then we could just listen to people's needs. I think it'd be a great opportunity, Bart.
Well,
hang on. I think Jim has his hand up. Are you putting your hand up, Jim? And I
I mean, I think that even if a dozen people showed up and said, some of their experiences, if a staff member was there, I don't know if they'd be able to have a staff member there, but probably would be because the city would be ordering it, that could inform their work. And that could be quite useful. But at any rate, the motion didn't specify timing. So council and staff could choose to do it after there's recommendations, or they could do it before there's recommendations because it didn't specify timing. But
the motion actually does specify timing, and I wondered, it said in this month or next, and I wondered.
Oh, I missed that, sorry.
If you would be willing to have a friendly amendment where it didn't, I agree that, I actually think that that the forum, whatever it is, needs to be a collaborative, coordinated process rather than, something that sort of happens in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm wondering if you're willing to add to change the to amend the motion to not have timing specifically, and that it be collaborative with the city. Can Jeremiah, what?
Well, okay. So the reason why I said this month or next month is because that's April or May. And if you put it off till June or July, there's no meeting in August. So we only have 1 month in September to even say anything. So even waiting till June, we do listening center in June, and then we come back to our meeting in July, and we're like, okay, well, this is what happened to our listening session. Okay, it's July, and then now it's August, no meeting. It's not much time to even do anything. So I'm just kind of tired of all this procrastination. We just kind of need to just get it done in the next 2 weeks and not have it be super formal and not have it be such a big deal. We just need the data. We just need to have a dozen people, I don't know. We just got to do something. And, like you say, the time is of the essence, right?
Okay, Jim. And by the way, sorry, go ahead.
If the city does it, it is not happening in 2 weeks, much less 6 and maybe not 8, because it's got to be agendized. Getting something agendized is not trivial for the city council. They have this ridiculous list of things that they're trying to deal with at any given time. And then, it's going to have to go to staff. It's not a small amount of work to put on one of these things where you have to notify the city and you have to have staff there. It's you got all kinds of requirements and stuff. If you wanted to do something fast, it would have to be not by the city. It would have to be by a community group that did it. And there's nothing to stop a community group from doing that. And a community group could say this Saturday at the park, we're going to do this. and somebody could transcribe what people say and send it to the city. But you can't, it just won't happen that fast. This process is a slow process. Commissions, council, staff, it's by its nature, it's slow. So if it really's got to be fast, it's got to be something other than the city.
And just to be clear, Kathy, are you there?
Oh, I think I have audio, but I'm trying to get my video back. So apologies. Thank you for being patient.
We're discussing a motion that's.
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You're discussing what?
We're currently on a motion to have a forum, mental health forum for the city of Albany, where in the next month, this month or the next month, to discuss mental health in the city. I mean, I want to say I'm not ready. You know, I'm very hesitant on putting anything. If you're not willing to accept the friendly amendment, I don't support this motion, because I think it is, I don't think it's strategically wise. I don't think the city will do it. And I want effective things to come out of the SCJC. I want people to, if the SCJC sends it, people listen, they do it. And I don't see this as feasible. But if, you know, I think we're ready to vote personally, unless there are other comments.
No, you can make a motion to amend. You can make a motion to amend.
Oh, that's right.
And then we discuss it and we vote on that motion to amend.
Okay.
Did anyone second the first motion?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So with a second, can I still amend it?
Oh, yeah. You know, you're making a motion to amend it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do a substitute motion.
Well, that's another option. You could do a substitute motion, or you could just make a motion to amend the motion. They're almost the same thing. Yeah.
I'm going to make a substitute motion, I believe, to have the city to send word to council that from the SCJC that we recommend that the city hold a forum for mental health. The issue of mental health, but I actually would like to, Bart, I'm trying to figure out the wording, because I actually think it is a good idea to get feedback on something that the city is deciding on. So can you help me with the wording?
I think that we want to have a listening session at the point that the city is ready to look at options for mental health services.
Okay. So the substitute motion is recommendation to council to hold a listening session, a community forum, when the city is ready to
consider alternatives.
Consider alternatives to the mental health services that the city provides. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Okay.
So that needs a second.
Okay.
Are you going to second that part?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. And now, are there any comments?
Yeah, I want to discuss.
Yeah.
So, my original idea was for basically myself and Bart to go down to the community and Will Bainan, all three of us as a subcommittee for mental health, go to the community center and meet with the public and interview the public ourselves and do our subcommittee work as a subcommittee. But it sounds like this motion has changed already 2 or 3 times, and now it went from, a subcommittee wanting to do something on our own, not having everybody get involved and letting us do our own research on our own time or whatever. And now it sounds like you want the city council to do a whole thing. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't have to be such a big deal. It was just, just a way for our subcommittee to get some data. So what exactly is the motion? Who's going to be doing this listening center? Is it our subcommittee anymore? Or are we just asking city staff to do our work for us and putting more on them to organize something? We're just asking city staff to just do more work?
We didn't understand what you had in mind.
Well, let me just clarify, Jim, which is that the substitute motion that is currently on the floor is a motion to have the city council involved in a public process that gets feedback from the public when they have something to entertain ideas about and get feedback on. So it does not preclude any subcommittee work that happens with any group of people that want to go out to any location in the city of Albany and do whatever happens in their subcommittee. The motion that's on the floor is about something, yes, that council would be doing. Bart?
It's been my experience over the years that listening sessions get attendance when there's something that's controversial. People don't generally, a few people will come, but you'd be surprised how many listening sessions that nobody ever shows up for, or very few people. And if you really want to get some data, you have to have a balanced representation. If you just, throw something open like that, it's not part of any process, you won't get enough people to draw any conclusions, and you won't get enough diversity. So I see this as part of a process. And while timing is of the essence, I also think that, timing is what's crucial. I see this as part of a process, not something that stands out there by itself. And therefore, it needs to come at a time when people want to talk about that, when there's something that's generating interest in the community, and when the city council is listening. And they will be listening when they're trying to make decisions. Otherwise, they're not listening. And I think in light of what's going on in terms of the decision that went on around the council changes in the policing task force, I think council may have learned a little bit of its lesson in terms of getting some input before it makes a decision. So that's the way I would see it. I think it should happen. It's just a matter of it happening when it's useful, when there's interest, because these things don't happen more than once. That's at least that's been my experience. You get one listening session, and if you're lucky, you might get more, but it's very unlikely.
So are we ready to vote? All right.
So just to clarify, this vote is on the substitute motion.
It is on the substitute motion to recommend to city council that they hold a listening session when the city is ready to entertain ideas on mental health services and programs for the city of Albany. So I think we're ready to, I don't know how to, maybe someone could mute. Is there?
I think that's Councilmember Rye.
No, I know. Oh, there. Okay.
Thank you. Council.
Oh, yeah.
Rye, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little scratchy in the background. Anne, can you, unless there, yeah, I think we're ready for a vote. So Anne, can you roll call us?
Commissioner Garrett Pinguello.
I mean, I'm going to vote yes because something's got to happen, but they're not going to be ready until September. So this is kind of a, never mind. Yes.
Commissioner Grossman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay.
I just want to say that, remember, community groups and individuals can do stuff much faster than the council can, so you could still do something. And I'm going to vote yes.
And Commissioner Rye.
Yes.
Chair Zapata.
Yes.
Motion carries. And just
Thank
for
you.
clarification, is there going to be some sort of memo from the commission?
Yes.
You mean to support the recommendation?
For us, for staff to forward that to the council.
Well, there's a reason to have the subcommittee meet to draft that.
Are you willing to do that, Bart?
In collaboration with the others.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But Bart, we didn't hear you. Are you able to convene that, or do you want to?
My convening has not been terribly effective. I think you should pick a different convener.
Okay. Since Will's not here, Jeremiah, would you like to be the convener to?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you. My first time being a convener. All right.
And one thing, Jeremiah, that I would suggest is to get, we've talked a lot about this in this commission, this commission. The format is important, and there's a format that is needed to be followed. So if you could reach out to Anne.
Oh, trust me, Anne and I, we're going to be working on this.
Okay. All right.
I will send Commissioner Garrett Pinguello the template for him to work on with the other subcommittee members. And just, I guess, an added note that if for some reason, because Commissioner Grossman had mentioned that he's having trouble convening a meeting, if there is still a problem, the memo can always be drafted and then brought back to the next SEJC meeting for the whole commission to review.
Yeah.
And vote on if it's okay to go to the council.
Yes, for sure. I mean, that ideally is the process.
Better way to do it,
yeah. So, Bart, are you still on that subcommittee, or what is your?
I guess so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
At least for the moment.
Yeah, got it. All right. We're going to go on to the next subcommittee, which is the housing subcommittee. So this was Jeremiah, Will, and Sierra. And Jeremiah, you're the only one here from the committee. Do you have anything to report?
Yeah. So we met, and there are a few things we talked about. So I'll mention, I know Sierra mentioned a few things about housing for UC students that are transitioning from being out of UC Village into normal housing, or I don't know how you want to call it normal housing, but graduating from UC Village housing. What are housing options for maybe UC Village alumni, in a sense? So that was kind of one of her concerns about that. And we talked a couple times. She had mentioned, and it was great that she had mentioned, there were a few people she had talked with that had difficulty time, I guess, with Albany Cares or something of that sense. And I was like, wow, me too. I was like, I know people that have a difficulty time. So we were trying to figure out a solution with Albany Cares that there's really no checks and balances. And Sierra came up with a great idea, actually. She says that maybe Anne-Marie needs an assistant. You know, because Anne-Marie does a lot of work by herself, I guess. And so Sierra was wondering if they can create a housing assistant, a specific housing assistant, like almost a job to help out Anne-Marie. So that was one thing she had brought to the table. I thought it was a good idea to have a check and balance and have a, you know, housing, some sort of assistant with Albany Cares job created. So she was trying to do that. And then of course, I had brought to the attention about, you know, people at the library, people sleeping in tents, and then how the city staff in Albany's basically treating homelessness and people with low income almost like criminals, like they're doing something wrong. You know, like sleeping in their car. The city staff put up the signs, you know, at the library, you can't park your car there. Well, that's basically, you know, attacking people sleeping in their cars. But that's housing. That's a roof over someone's head. So housing is all walks of life. Van, a tent, and those people are struggling. So we shouldn't make them feel bad about their situation. We should try to offer them help. So with that, I wanted to advise City Council and recommend them to not actively go after people sleeping in their cars and not to actively go after people sleeping in tents. You know, kind of almost just let it happen. So I don't really what we're recommending here for the housing, but it's almost kind of difficult to do this by myself without Sierra and Will here. Sierra always has great conversation, and Will's really intelligent as well. So does anybody want to ask any questions while I think of anything more to say real quick?
I actually wanted to go to public comment. I apologize.
Good idea.
Yeah. So if anyone in the public has a comment, please raise your hand. All right, seeing no comment. I just wanted to say one thing I know that I believe there's someone new in Albany Cares. Is that correct, Anne? Is there a new employee? No.
For Albany Cares, not that I'm aware of. There's a new employee, the COVID engagement specialist.
Is that Kate Miller or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the COVID engagement specialist.
Okay. But Anne-Marie left the city of Albany, right?
No.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. Okay. I apologize. I got things wrong. Dash all my comments. I see Bart's hand and then Jim's.
In terms of Albany Cares, I'm a little confused because we have this Project Hope, which is supposed to deal with housing issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, is Anne-Marie also dealing with housing issues? I thought she was referring people to Albany Cares when it's a matter of housing. And also in terms of assistance for her, there are volunteers, like she's got 5 or 6 people that work with her. Now it's true they're not trained, they're trained, but they're not experts on referral, et cetera. So she picks up and follows up, but she's not entirely alone. But I just don't understand why we're talking about that in relation to housing, because if we're talking about the city's role in housing, we should be talking about Project Hope. The other thing I was going to say is we had a presentation tonight on the housing element. I would like to see the housing subcommittee play a watchdog role in terms of issues of equity and inclusion in that process. Because it's been mentioned, but I haven't yet seen anything specific in terms of how that's to be achieved. So, and that process happens every 10 years. So if we don't pay attention now, it's going to be a long time before there's another chance.
Thank you. Jim, and then just a reminder on time, I want us to be aware. Jim?
We're due to finish when?
9:30.
And what do we have left? We have one or two more reports. So I move that we extend time to 9:40.
Any seconds? Bart is second. Can we do a roll call on extending till 9:40?
I'm sorry, did I have Commissioner Grossman seconding that motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Garapinguelo?
Can we just make a substitute motion? That way we don't have to keep spending so much time over and over.
We found the noise.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you. What time did you want to?
Just say 10 o'clock. That way we don't have to keep wasting time on keep extending the meeting. I just want to give ourselves enough time instead of having to redo this thing over and over.
So roll call on the substitute motion.
Well, it needs a second.
We need a second.
Oh, sorry. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Garapinguelo for 10 o'clock.
Yes, please.
Commissioner Grossman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay.
No.
Commissioner Rai.
Yes.
Chair Zapata.
No.
I think the motion passes. Sorry, my math is a little late.
Okay. So what I was going to say is after the last meeting where I feel like I kind of misspoke and was a little harsh on Albany Cares. I think Albany Cares is awesome. And Anne-Marie is awesome. I love the idea of getting her another person. That would be huge. Or I've heard a rumor, but I don't know if it's true, that there might be somebody helping her part-time, but we're talking about a full-time person here. She does apparently do some referrals for rental housing assistance as part of their portfolio. They are not, I'm not addressing this to anybody, but what I learned, one thing that's really important is they're not allowed to be case managers. Like that violates the rules. So they cannot guarantee when they make a referral that the person is actually going to get the help. They do the very best they can. Sometimes without being a case manager, they follow up when they can. But remember, they can't be a case manager, so they have to be careful not, so it's tricky business. But yeah, I think overall, getting Anne-Marie some help would be pretty fabulous. And the volunteers, they can only handle so many volunteers. They show up sometimes they don't. Like you said, they're not necessarily trained to handle some of the trickier situations. So volunteers are great, but then a staff person would be really, really fabulous. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. So that's it for me.
So Jeremiah, and then I have a comment.
Oh, I was just going to make a motion. Let's go for your comment first.
I guess, yeah, I would encourage you all to do a little exploring of you. It sounded, I would encourage you all to do some meeting with Albany Cares and Project Hope and learning a little bit more, and then having that be part of your any reports you have. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to motion that, we recommend the city council to create a part-time job, an extra part-time job as an assistant for Albany Hope or Albany Cares.
Bart?
Yeah, Anne Marie, can you tell us, is
Anne,
not Anne Marie, I mean, Anne, I'm sorry, it's late. It's late for me too. And is Anne Marie still part-time? And also, does she have somebody working with her now? I also think I heard something like that, but I didn't pay a lot of attention.
Unfortunately, I'm not in that department, so I believe she is full-time.
Okay.
But
she started out as half-time, but yeah.
Yes, I can double check, but yeah. And just a reminder, the item that's for discussion is Housing Subcommittee, not really on Albany Cares.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Jim? Or is that Jeremiah? Jim, you're on mute.
I had not thought of that. I was going to suggest that the motion be brought back to our next meeting so that it can be put in the proper format and presented to this commission in that way. Is there anything in our work plan that would allow that? A motion to recommend that Albany Cares be allocated, or I think he's proposing Albany Cares or Project Hope. Increase staff by 1 full-time equivalent. Is that anywhere in our work plan?
Well,
so I see Jeremiah's hand. Jeremiah, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to correction. I'm getting a lot of feedback on the Albany Cares, and its housing. I'm misspeaking. It's Albany Project Hope, right? Well, the housing, gets referred from Anne Marie. When someone's sleeping in a tent or sleeping in their car or housing, it does go first to Anne Marie. So yes, it still does have to do with housing if it's an assistant for Anne Marie. So I'm okay. I'm okay with postponing this motion until next meeting when Will and Sierra are here and we have some more information, some more feedback. I would love to hear Sierra, talk about this. So, and then we could, that could wait a month. That's something that's, not as important as mental health, something that can't wait. So this could wait a month. That's okay.
Yeah, and you could use that same form that Anne is going to send you for the format that the council wants to put together a proposal to bring in. So yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, you got it. Thank you, everybody.
Bart? Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but Anne would know. We do, as an SEJC, we are responsible for oversight of Albany Cares. And we're supposed to get a report from them at some point. And it might be in that context that we could make a recommendation for assistance for Anne Marie. Since we, at that point, would have a sense of what's going on there and what the needs are, we would get numbers in that report.
I don't think that's due until July.
Oh.
And do you know what month Albany Cares is coming?
Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong buttons and I'm muting the wrong people. Sorry about that. No, I have to double check.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure.
I guess I just want to go on the record to say I'm very hesitant to vote on encouraging a staff position like that when I actually think the staff position that needs to be created is the equity person. So, you know, I want to be on record to say that I think we need to find out more about this position. I feel like this is so far from my mind, getting extra staff I'm not even sure what's happening. And I know, I've heard Sierra's critique, and I don't think right now is the time to add more funds. I'm curious about what's actually happening and if we can get some clarity. So I also look forward to whenever we can, and I can follow up as in future meetings, obviously as the chair, but I think we need to have more information. And so I wanted to make that comment. Jeremiah and then Bart. Jeremiah, did you have your hand up?
I'm sorry. Let me put my hand down. I'm sorry.
Okay, Bart.
Yeah, I was going to support what you just said, and also add to it that before we recommend additional help for Anne-Marie, we should see if Anne-Marie wants additional help. It'd be very embarrassing to make a recommendation and have her say she doesn't really think that's a good idea.
Well, Bart, it was, sorry to interrupt. It wasn't whether or not she really wanted the help or not. It was more of a check and balance, you know, and also help, but it was a check and balance, and it's not really, you know, what she wants. It's kind of more what the community is kind of requesting.
I see. Well, again, it would be useful to talk to her if we're going to do this.
Okay. I'm going to move us to the next committee, which is the Aging Disabled Homebound Subcommittee, which is Bart and Jim.
Good. I think we had a lot of time last time, and we made our recommendation on aging. We haven't met subsequently. We have to meet on disabilities, but we haven't done that yet.
Got it. Okay. Any public comment? Please raise your hand. Okay, we'll move on to the Youth Leadership Subcommittee, which is Will and Jeremiah.
Yeah, hey, so we talked about the Youth Speak. That was because they did a presentation in our meeting, was it last month? So we talked about that. That's really good because that goes to all the schools, that branches out to the schools, and that and it encourages leadership through each school. We talked about having actual leadership class, I think at the middle school and even elementary school level, just to encourage youth leaders, just encourage, you know, let them know that that's something that happens in high school. There's a leadership class. And so we thought that was a really good idea to try to get actual leadership classes, middle school and elementary school. Will was talking about getting volunteers together at the high school. I think that was really neat. And we were talking about, was it forming a, because this is the youth leadership task force. We were talking about creating, kind of renaming it in a way, but it was kind of one thing we talked about. Will is going to try to get some high school students to volunteer on Friday, every other Friday, to help with food delivery. It's about 3,000 pounds of food, and it was just kind of myself and a volunteer from Berkeley Food Network delivering the food at the high school, the cafeteria. So Will was going to try to get a sports team every other Friday, like the football team or the wrestling team or softball or volleyball team, to spend 5 minutes of the lunchtime helping do food. So we're just trying to figure out ideas and ways to basically get the youth more involved. And because Will was saying that the youth is ready to learn, they're really excited, they're really nice people, and they're really excited. And so the conclusion we made is that we were going to recommend, because I was talking about it to Will, the Civics Academy, and how we used to have the Civics Academy in the Recreation Department. And that was a great program for the youth. And Will saw the YouTube video of the Civics Academy in Albany, I think in 2017, something like that, a long time ago. And so he wanted to, he agreed with me that we should try to bring back the Civics Academy. So if we could recommend anything from our meeting this month, we'd like to recommend the city council to bring back the Civics Academy at the Recreation Department to help the youth.
I see there's some public comment. Can we bring in public comment on this item? Hello, hi there.
Hi, I would like to make a public comment. Hi, my name is Judy. I've been living in Albany for almost 10 years. Last October, I ended up homeless, living in my car, and my car broke down. So I've been stuck. I was stuck here, but nobody noticed me. Nobody asked anything. And finally, I was able to get some help because a friend of mine went to the senior center. She was told Albany Cares would place me in a housing. Albany Cares referred me to Berkeley Food and Housing. I was told that I would get housing. At the beginning, I was assured. Well, many things happened, but I'm still here. I do need to find housing. I'm looking for it. I have health issues. I have fibromyalgia. I have arthritis, and I have a health issue for which I have an appointment the third week of this month. I have a date to deal with it. So, but I also been going through a lot of harassment. I didn't know exactly what that was, but people taking videos, photos, driving their cars with the headlights straight towards my car and staring at me. Last Saturday was really bad because several people were going by, making videos, photos, just walking, looking at, the 2 or 3 people that are here. It's being scary because I don't know exactly what they are capable of. And sorry, I'm very nervous. And of course, they called police. And before midnight, police went several times, like 3 times, because they were, the specific lady was here for several hours, just, making videos, whatever she was doing. I'm not here on a vacation in the parking lot. Things happen in my life. I never was in this situation before, but I went to talk to the people I thought they would help, but things have not worked out. So I need to deal with it on my own, I suppose. But yeah, I said my health issues. Now, there was no warning before they put the signs, we're going to put the signs in a week.
Judith, your time is up.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your public comment. I think this is, I really first want to thank you so much, Judith, for sharing such a, personal story, for helping us understand your experience in the city of Albany. And, the work that we're doing tonight is very connected to what you're talking about. And I hope that our efforts can address, the issues that you're surfacing. I think that this question of what Albany Cares does and how Albany Cares is connecting you and others to services is something that we've been trying to understand. I think your comments help make very real these questions of housing and in the city of Albany. We were talking about Jeremiah, you were presenting about the Youth Commission and, the Youth Subcommittee.
Yeah, so that's fine. Yeah, thank you, Judy, for your comment, and thank you, Chair, for letting her speak. You know, I wanted to recommend, you know, to City Council that we bring back the Civics Academy, you know, regarding the Youth Task Force. The Civics Academy is really important for the youth. And so that was something that Will and I agreed that if we were going to recommend something to City Council for our housing, or bring back to this commission to send to City Council, we're going to recommend bringing back the Civics Academy as it's a recreation class. I think it's a program. It costs $10. So we're trying to get that to come back.
Bart, and then I have some questions. Oh, Bart, you're muted?
I just noticed. Do we know if the city is planning to bring back the Civics Academy? It may have been closed because of COVID. They may already be planning to do that, Jeremiah. We should find that out. And then we voted, I think, unless my memory is completely messed up, but we voted, I thought, early on to support the notion of a youth task force, youth advisory committee or task force for the city. And Will was going to work on that. But we had supported that notion, and I don't know where that went. I don't think we've made any recommendation to the council about it.
I mean, oh, sorry.
Jeremiah, do you know about that?
You're talking about I know what you're talking about, but I was always kind of confused also. It's another task force being created, or a commission?
I thought it was like an advisory group, but it was essentially going to be I don't know, we'd have to think about, but somebody needs to think about that, and I hope you guys would.
You know what?
Yeah.
That could be something really neat, almost like the SEJC Commission or the Arts Committee or the Climate Action, a youth committee or a youth commission, to where, you know, it's all youth people on there. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought we had already. I thought Will had brought up that notion, and we had supported it.
Yes, it was approved by the commission.
Probably now it needs to be drafted, much like the other. So that's actually, Jeremiah, that's something you all could work on, is get that so that it can get through the SE.
And I mean, okay, those memos can be kind of confusing, and when somebody has never done one, you know, it can be kind of confusing, and it's often helpful if they just get a little bit of support. Is there some way that, what did you suggest last time? You suggested maybe a friendly city council member could do it or something. You said another commissioner can't because we'd be violating Brown. I kind of understand that. But
if they have questions, they can always ask me. I can't write it for them,
right,
but I can definitely help answer questions.
Okay.
And I think the last time what I suggested is that perhaps their appointing council member might be able to help. But, you know, because I realized an issue after the fact is that SEJC has 7 members, so the quorum is 4. But if 3 of the subcommittee member goes to 3 of their appointing members, council members, and somehow, 3 is a quorum for council.
That's right. That's right. That would be violating Brown.
Yeah.
But if they together said we're going to utilize, for example, Councilmember McQuaid, I'm volunteering again because she appointed the Commissioner Bainan. I don't see how Jeremiah can do this because he was appointed by the school board. Maybe they can figure it out by themselves or do a first draft and then run it by you. Could they run it by you maybe, or they could just email it to one of the council members, not 3, and just say, have we got this in the right format? I'm not asking you to write content for us.
Yeah, in terms of the formatting, they can definitely email me with questions.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Jim Lindsay, it's Jeremiah. I just want to say that I do regularly meet with Super and Tenant Wells, and we have good open communication, and so there's some things that I could work on.
Great. Yeah, if you could draft one of these things and send it to Ann or run it by the superintendent or something, just to make sure you got it in the format they want. Once you've done it once or twice, I think you'll find it's not that hard. It's just the first time's kind of, can be kind of confusing. That's all.
All right.
So I think, is that all on your subcommittee, Jeremiah?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to move us to future agenda items. If you have any requests for future agenda items, please raise your hand. Jim? You're muted.
Okay, try again. Recommendation for an equity officer for the city of Albany.
Yeah.
So that'll be part of the subcommittee. Yeah. Jeremiah?
Yeah, I'd like to do something, almost monthly, because there's always holidays, right? Like Cesar Chavez. And it's like we didn't even do anything. I mean, I think you acknowledged it last meeting. You do a great job. But I know there's a holiday every month, and there's got to be a social justice holiday every month. And so I was just wondering if monthly we can do something for social justice. I don't know what I'm saying right now. It's just a future agenda item to kind of pay more attention to holidays or current issues. Maybe we should have a spot on our future agenda for a current issue, like something that happened that week or the week before our meeting comes up, and we talk about a current issue, a current social justice issue. That'd be great. Like the mass shooting that happened in Sacramento yesterday or something, just to talk about stuff. Thanks.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. So our next meeting is Tuesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Good night.